welcome everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Make Me Like This. I'm Brandon. This is Jeff. Different sides here. Boom, 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 boom. Always
Oh no,
great content
it's
for
I
the
can't
audio listeners on Spotify.
I can't do it. There we go.
That's all right. Hey, it is Friday. Work is over. For me, it's over for the year. So I've a devil may care attitude, man. But not towards this. This topic is something I'm very passionate about. And Jeff is very passionate about because, and we've talked about this in a previous episode where we said, make me like Will Smith as a rapper. And now we're talking about Will Smith's book titled Will. We both read it. I did the audiobook version. Did you do the same? Did you listen
Yeah,
to it or did you read it? You listened to
I
it. Okay.
listened to it.
I'm a little angry because you called my attention to the fact that, oh, if you've never had Audible before, you can get a free trial and get a free book. And I was like, oh great, I'll do that, and I can experience the Will Smith book that I'm really interested in at the price of free. And I did it, and then a couple of days ago I got an email saying, hey, your next month's subscription to Audible has been run through your credit card. Enjoy
Oh
another
no.
month, and I forgot to cancel it. So
Sorry
anyway,
about that.
15. Yeah, that's all right. You know what?
The
I'll get another book, and I'll get two books for $15. Not a big deal. Just throwing that paper around. Just throwing that
the
paper around.
the trick there is whenever I get an Audible book, I subscribe because it's cheaper to do a monthly subscription and get a credit than it
Yeah.
is to buy a book outright. And then I I use the credit and then I immediately cancel. Like right then, I
That would have
immediately
been smart.
cancel.
That would have
And
been smart.
yeah, I should have wrote down the notes exactly and then mailed them to you.
That's all right.
I
You're
had a
not
napkin and a
responsible
Sharpie
for
available.
saving my money. Yeah,
My mom
that's
used
quite
to
all right.
write notes to me in my lunch on
Yeah.
napkins with Sharpie growing up.
Ooh.
And I distinctly remember I would always open them up and see how many dots like bled through because it was a Sharpie, right?
Yeah.
So it was always a thing for me to see like was she heavy-handed today and and
Yeah.
and it like made a replica on the next page, or was it just a couple Morse code dots?
Pay no mind to the thoughtful, caring message that your mother sent you as you
Immediately
traversed your
open that
day.
up.
You don't care. You just like, how much pressure did she put on the pen as she was writing this note? That's okay. We
It's
don't
a
all love our mothers,
curiosity.
but hey, it's all right.
Yeah, I don't love my mother. I just want to. I'm just an anthropologist.
That's all right. No, Jeff loves his mother. Um, I've met her. Anyway, Jeff, we're going to be talking about the book Will Smith's autobiography, and you had some thoughts that you wanted to share to kind of set a framework for how we discuss this. Is that right?
Yeah, I have three themes that I think stood out to me the most in the book Will.
Yeah.
The and I'll read off the three themes to start us off with, and I'll let you pick where we go first. How about that?
Yeah.
So the three themes you have to choose from: linguistic and non-linguistic communication, starting off sexy, and then fluid versus rigid values. Apparently, I want to make everything a conflict, except for this last one, flow.
Flow.
So again, linguistic and non-linguistic communication, fluid versus rigid values, and flow. Those are three themes. Which theme do you want to explore first?
I want to start with flow because I think it's like the lightest.
Okay.
Start with
So
that, and we'll go in the others, and then we'll flow into the next one.
absolutely, we're starting this one off great with our segues. So
Right
the
on.
the story that I want to use to frame flow is Will talks about he was recording. I forget which number album was it. Their third or fourth studio album in Chicago,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, it was the third one, Home Base.
home base, right?
Yeah.
So they're recording their home base, their third studio album in Chicago. They have a great session. At this point in their career, they're more businesslike than
Mhm.
they ever were, because Will's both of them are doing Fresh Prince, but Will is turning into what Will would become, which is this this TV and movie star.
Yeah.
And their focus is much more businesslike,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
interesting. Yeah, go
right,
ahead.
and coming off of the second album, which was a huge flop, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, this was it was the one with I think I can beat Mike Tyson. I forget the name of the album, but they spent a lot of time partying with the money from the record company in the Bahamas, was it?
Right.
And not a lot of time spent focusing on the music. And admittedly, it wasn't a good album. Admittedly by Will in the autobiography, and I think as they looked toward this third album, really taking a business approach to it, taking it very seriously, and having that success of the Fresh Prince and saying, okay, we've been catapulted now through the
Yeah.
television show and everything like that. So we really have to take advantage of this opportunity and take it very seriously. So
That's that's a good reminder for me. Like, yes, the second studio album where they were just effing around, and Daddy-O comes through and like puts the fear of God in both of them as well, which is a great, like, to have your dad show up in the Bahamas,
yeah,
that when you're half naked with girls on your lap,
yeah,
that's a pretty that's nails on a chalkboard.
it's a
That's the
wake up.
record skipping, right?
And Daddy-O
But
is the affectionate term that he and his family used to refer to his dad. So when he says Daddy-O, that's his dad.
yeah, so I think something else here too is just they had less time to devote to that. They were no longer in the, like, artistic mindset. That definitely, I think, is the backbone, what you set up, of like lessons learned. They got burned,
Yeah,
and they took an opposite approach. But they didn't have any pressure to make. They didn't need this album,
right, right.
because Fresh Prince and they were getting their revenue from elsewhere.
Right.
And I recall Will saying that they'd show up in the studio, do their thing, and it was for them, right?
Yeah.
But the thing, how this attaches to the theme of flow, is they wrap up the studio sessions, and at the end, I think it's a producer, because it wasn't Jeff that passed him this, but like a
Mm.
producer passed him a CD
Yes.
with Untitled written on it, and it turns out to be the instrumental for Summertime, that
Yes.
you know is just a classic hip hop record, but just a classic summertime vibe as well, right?
Yeah.
Samples Summer Madness, and is really like, I would say is, you don't count the Will Smith single, or like the Will Smith solo stuff for this, but when you're talking like DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, to me, Summertime, it is their best song, period.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um
That's the most classic of them, in terms of standing the test of time for sure,
right,
and
definitely.
probably most popular and critically acclaimed of the under the moniker DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
And Will takes the CD, doesn't know what it is yet, heads to the airport, about to get on a flight, and he's like, I'll pop this in. He pops it in and just hits him,
Yeah.
and he starts writing. And he writes essentially Summertime from start to finish. Like not in fits and starts, not over several sessions. Sits down and writes it bar by bar in order, pretty much throughout to the end. So just flows out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Then he gets to the then he just makes the choice. He doesn't get on the plane. He goes back to the studio because he's got to record it right then while he's in the groove, right?
Right.
He needs to continue to get it out of him. And he ends up changing his cadence, his style. He can't deliver it how he would normally lay down a record at that point in his career. And because his voice is wrecked. He just got done with a sprint of a recording session. And so the people in the studio with him say, hey, just like do it laid back. And he ends up channeling, like he calls out that he channeled Rakim, who was like one of his favorite artists, and he ends up delivering with that and that laid back vibe, along with the with the instrumental, which is totally laid back and
right.
and big and airy. It ends up being the perfect vibe for that record. So the lyrics flow out of them, and then serendipitously, because of limitations and not like trying to like work again, like not trying to rise above them, but to just get in the pocket within them, ends up making this beautiful masterpiece that in all reality took a day.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how long. I mean, I don't know how long Jeff was tracking that out with the to produce the that version of that instrumental from sample and drums and everything like that.
Yeah.
But Will's part from conception to on wax is within a day. A couple notes I have on that is that just like it got me thinking about Rakim in particular when he invokes that, and I had.
Oh, think we lost you. Oh wait, hold on. There he is.
Oh, I'm back. I got booted.
It was a quick boot.
The timing, the time. It's like this guy needs to go. So
it was the hook at the Apollo.
Yeah, I had never associated that record with being terribly abnormal compared to, especially compared to what you'd hear from like on Big Willie Style or these later solo albums where Will Smith's cadence is slower, more like laid
deliberate,
back, and just kind of like methodical and rolling. Whereas his it did make me think that his Fresh Prince stuff is like a higher register, a little bit like I don't mean to be derogatory. It's a little more whiny. It's a little more conversational type rap than it is like mid 90s to early 2000s, like that brand.
Sure.
This might represent a pivot point. I mean, it's in that era where the era itself would influence it. But it was interesting for me to think that, like, yes, this stylistically marked a departure from the earlier Fresh Prince stuff. But like, to speak to Rakim a little bit, Rakim's like the brilliance of Rakim is his cadence is like confident, is like silky smooth, and he hits syllables perfectly on every bar. Like his spacing and his multi syllable rhyme schemes for that time in the 80s is like pioneer work for
Mm.
like what the golden era, and then into just, even up to today you can find evidence in like Pusha T is very has a lot of legacy of Rakim in his
Mm.
style, just methodical, steady, even, precise, like, but yet floats through.
Yeah.
You never hear like Pusha T fight a beat. You never hear Rakim fight a beat, and that's what you're hearing with Will Smith here too. Where it's not always the case. Like I've heard Will Smith fight a beat before.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
on this audiobook at the end, the song where he's very much like that, where he's fighting it.
Yeah.
But that was cool, like to hear him talk about that. But this is so that's the story. What I'm
Mm.
wondering is, do you have experience with flow, and do you have like any stories you might share about moments of flow in your life?
Personally,
Yeah,
oh man. Well, first, I to allow me
yeah,
some space to think about that.
yeah. Go
Um,
ahead.
as it pertains to Flo and Will Smith and his career, as he says in the book, um, he that was probably the point. The point that you're identifying with, summertime, is the transition from the Fresh Prince to Will Smith, right? Because
Mhm.
after that was Will Smith, Big Willie style, as Will Smith, not DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. That was his solo thing, right? It was also the time at which he started out on the show with no acting experience. He's just a rapper that they brought in who filled this role of this fish out of water, from the hood to Hollywood. I think they called it, right. That when Benny Medina was pitching his Benny Medina is the producer of the show, who went from, I think it was Compton, to live with a family in Beverly Hills. And this was his story. And then he pitched it to Quincy Jones, and Quincy Jones became aware of Will Smith and put him in this role. And that's how that kind of synthesized. But no acting experience. But as he talks about how he masters his craft, whatever craft that is, his methodical nature of almost obsessively chasing that
Mhm.
perfection, from rapper to TV star, then to movie star, then to superstar, like the biggest star in the world. That's what he said. I want to be the biggest star in the world. And that dedication to it that he talks about, that was instilled in him from Daddy-O at a young age, building that wall, or with when it comes to school, when it comes to his responsibilities, that concept of find something, master it, then before that thing is done, figure out what that next thing is, and then
Yeah.
get into that full speed ahead, master that, which I think allowed him to flow from broke rapper to TV star to movie star to international superstar.
Mm.
Have I ever felt that? I think there are times where I'm, creating. I enjoy content creation, whether it's, acting in the past, creating videos, writing. I think that I will procrastinate, and my producing partner that I would work on those projects with, he would say, "Hey man, by before Christmas, we got to have this script written out," and then he'll check in with me, "Hey, it's Thanksgiving. Have you started yet?" I'm getting around to it. I'm getting around to it and stuff. And then at that very last moment, that last weekend before it's due, I turn everything off and I just go boom, 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 and totally focus on getting it done. And I can do that. And I think that the time that I spend in that last 48 hours before something is due, and due is a relative term here, right? Because there's no one with $1 million check saying, "Hey, you got to turn this in before this date, otherwise this check goes away." It's. I think he knew that I need an arbitrary deadline so that I can get into that mode. But when I'm there, it just happens, and I lay it all out, flesh it out, go back over it, fix some things, and that's the closest I can get to that flow. But for me, it's got to have an additional pressure of time. You're running out of time, so your attention has to be like condensed to really focus on that. And it might take me an additional pressure to do that, but it almost forces me to get into that flow because I have to, otherwise it's not going to get done. So I think that's probably the closest I can come to flow as it pertains to to creativity or something like that. And I'm not sure, like when you're working on music, is that what happens for you? You get into flow. You need a steady block of time that's uninterrupted that you can just spend on it and get there.
I think now, especially, constraints are really helpful because the more that you've got, the more responsibilities you've got in life, the more, um, the more you need to put constraints into place that will allow you to make the time, because
Right.
otherwise all those other responsibilities create their own implicit constraints that constrain you from ever getting there.
Yeah.
So absolutely, in order to get to like an artistic flow state, I've got to have uh sorry, boiler kicks on,
You got
it's
to have a
loud.
hot pocket.
Got to have a hot pocket.
Got to have a hot pocket to get into that flow.
I think that, so to your point, I think they're, on the surface you might think that constraints are inhibitive to flow,
Hmm.
because like I think when I think of flow, I think of like lightning striking you, and you don't necessarily know when it's
Hmm.
going to come. And so, like as an example to your question, I will make time every Friday night to listen to um, listen to instrumentals that my buddy sends over to me in packages.
Yeah.
And especially if I get a new package during the week, I'll hold off listening, and I'll listen to it on Friday nights. Lightning doesn't strike every Friday night,
Mm.
but there has been, and actually flow hits me a lot less with music under that model, because if I'm not on, then I'm not on. What it ends up being a lot is I segment it, and then I just kind of it ends up being like work. I punch a clock. I get in.
Yeah.
This week I worked on, I usually mumble and try to work out cadences when I'm listening to instrumentals, and I also like to let it like speak to me of like what's the theme here and what's going on in my life, like because I'll be workshopping stuff in my head right now. I want to write. I want to write something about a relationship that I know that the moment that I realize um, that it's ending, and
Yeah.
I actually had like that thought in my head before I listened to this book, and then he has like that setting of concrete, like he's aware that in this moment
Hmm.
his relationship with his first wife is over,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's moving on. But I'll be workshopping those things in my mind, but it's more like, I don't know, it's more like putting a puzzle together. for me
Mm-hmm.
nowadays.
Yeah.
When I was younger, and I think I reached flow a lot more often. Like I remember this one time when I was in college, and I remember it vividly. I heard an instrumental for the first time, and I knew that this song uh, needed to be about um, it. It needed to be about the personification of the plain Enola Gay as a mother. And Enola Gay, for if you're not aware, is the plane that dropped an atomic bomb over Japan. And
Oh, okay. Okay.
so like, and I wrote that song from start to finish and recorded it in it like when I listen now. I'm not Will Smith, and this song is not on the level of a professional musician,
Mm,
but
mm.
I immediately thought of that moment in my dorm room, and I had Apple Jacks, an open thing of Apple Jacks that was on my desk that was slightly stale because it had been there for a little bit, but it was the closest thing to eat, so I kept throwing those things in. Like I can remember what my room smelled like 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 slightly musty, but like
Yeah.
a breeze coming from outside because it was springtime, and so I could smell the spring. Like I can remember what the carpet felt like on my feet,
Mm,
because I was barefoot at a desk writing this.
yeah.
But it all came together in like 4 or 5 hours, and I think it's among like the songs that that I'll go back and I'll listen to the most, especially like my older stuff. I tend to not like it as much, but
Yeah. Same.
like I've had that moment where just inspiration hits, and that's probably the most pronounced of like the most memorable.
Yeah.
But for me, I'll be I'll be sitting at work, and I'll have my to-do list, and increasingly like this the I am more oriented and have a vision for what my day is going to be like than I've ever been.
Mm,
But when that voice in my head, like that idea speaks to me, and I can just drop everything and listen to it, I can get I can get into those things. I've been in
yeah.
situations professionally this week where it's like, oh, that should be a thing. Let me just write, and
Mm,
I'll write 9 pages, and it'll come out of me.
yeah.
Um, but
It's
so
really
I think you
it's
have to
really
tap
about
into it.
yeah, it's really about riding the wave of inspiration and
Yeah,
taking advantage of that when you can, because you can't control when inspiration is going to hit you, and when it does, you better grab onto it and buckle up, and use it until it's gone, because that is a driving force that is going to get you to completion, and that's you gotta take advantage of it. You gotta take advantage of it.
it's a great way to describe it. Is that it starts with an idea, and I think like for me that's a voice. Like I have voices speaking to me in in my brain, but it's like the your ability to just drop everything and listen to it,
Yeah.
and follow it and see where it goes is how you can get there. And I also think like I've been in a flow state before, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in a flow state, and then I was out of it pretty quickly thereafter.
Yeah.
After
It's like
I
a no
did my
hitter.
whole
You don't
thing.
want to say like, oh,
Yeah,
he's about to have a no
yeah.
hitter, and it's gonna jinx it, and it's gonna come crashing down. So we talked about flow. What was that second thing that you said? The second
You kind of hinted at
topic.
it too when you were talking about always he got burnt, right? What was it? His it was an early relationship, right? Where it it
Mm,
it ended badly, and he let it go on too long. past the point of where it was still good. And from
Mm-hmm.
that point on, he locked in his head that um, everything must come to an end,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm never, I'm always going to have the next thing lined up. I'm never going to be in this situation again where
Yeah.
it gets past ripe and and I don't have the next thing lined up.
Yeah, and
And
this was the girlfriend where he was rapping. He had made some money. He bought a place of his own in Philly, and he was basically living with this woman. They were partying a lot. They started to hate each other, but neither one of them wanted to end it. And it sort of ended when he moved out to LA to pursue to start the Fresh Prince. Is that the relationship you're referring to, I think?
yeah, and this
Yeah.
this kind of behavior comes up with him frequently. Like I think it's one of his most fundamentally defining traits is that his through lines are just different than I think that I don't know that it's necessarily different from me or different from the average person, but it's I found it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He so he breaks through with music, right? His relationship with Jeff is it is the first stepping stone in his life that takes him from, because it happens when he's in high school, right?
Right.
And it takes him into the first level of his entertainment career. And from that point on, he's a professional entertainer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes broke and out of a out of a job entertainer, but that's his gig. He didn't really
Yeah.
have a job other than that, except
Yeah.
for helping out with his dad's company.
Yeah.
Um, but he's when he has when the Quincy Jones thing happens, when Fresh Prince of Bel Air becomes a thing, and he's going to become a TV star and eventually a movie star. Those are the things that he's lining up. Jeff is
Yeah.
not that way.
Right.
Jeff Jeff is motivated by making music. He's an artist, and and still to this day is still largely defined, at least in my mind, by being a musician. And his relationship with Will is a it's at a great intersection of different things. Will is on an entertainment, like he wants to entertain people, like he wants the stage, he wants to have that impact with people. His vehicle to get him there is fluid. Jeff's is very defined,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
even takes like some manipulation on on Will's part to get him to be jazz in Fresh Prince of Bel Air, right? And then the other thing too is like the way that he seeks feedback, the way that he's thinking about the next step. He becomes a movie star, right? He is, and he finds himself in a room with who? Tom Hanks. Um, I know
I
Arnold
think it was
Schwarzenegger's there.
Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and Bruce Willis
Yes,
were the proprietors of the Planet Hollywood franchise, the
right.
restaurant chain. Yeah, yeah. And those three, at that time, I think this was like late '90s, right? Biggest stars in the world, and he, a person who has appeared on television and in movies, was saying, okay, well, how do I get to that? How do I be one of those guys
Right.
over there? And asks him, and I think that's when Arnold said to him what he said, which was I've already forgot. I know it sounded like this. Well, the thing is, you have to look at it like this. How do you do it? I don't know. I'm from Austria. How do I do it?
Okay, you have to be successful internationally.
Oh yes, yes. It's fine to be a movie star in the United States, but there's the entire world out there that you also have money. They give you money to come do that. So you have to when you have a movie produced, you go to China, you go to Germany, you go to France, and you do your interviews. And if they like you have all the power. I don't know what he said, but it was something like that, probably.
Well, see, in
But
that
it's true,
example,
right?
he's it is true, and
Yeah.
he's a worker, right? He's got to be busy,
Yeah.
and he's got to be putting in effort to succeed. I think he's the quintessential achiever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, almost to a fault, right? Because
right.
it's at the detriment of everything else in his life. I am going to be the best actor I can possibly be. And I think one of the stories he tells is in his first marriage, in hiatus between the first season of Fresh Prince and the next, he did this movie with Stockard Channing and a creepy looking guy that I can't remember his name. But it's called Six Degrees of Separation. He played like a con man who, got this couple to fall in love with him, and he conned them, and he embodied this character so much. This was a depressed character. There was so much about him that was flawed, and he brought that with him into his life, his personal life. And so, he would come home and his wife would say like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And he didn't want to do anything because he was just like so drained from playing this character and embodying this character. He said he fell in love with the woman who was playing the person who he wanted to fall in love with in the story
Hmm.
in real life because he went so deep into that character and it affected him. So, like, his obsessive need to be the best at everything, it's worked for him, right? Because he became the biggest star in the world, one of the biggest stars in the world. But at a cost, a cost of his marriage, cost at a relationship with his kids, cost at, friendship, like childhood friendships that dissolved and stuff. There's a real cost to that. So it's so interesting because on one hand, you look at someone like him and you think, gosh, I wish I was like that. Gosh, I wish I had all of that. But I think you see like a thread through his life that like nothing is ever good enough. There's a real sense of loneliness in that, right? Because there's just you and your craft and not a lot else, right? I felt throughout the different chapters of the book, I felt sad for him. I felt lonely. I
Hmm.
felt depressed for him because you have got a hit show on TV and you're not happy. You've got more money than you could have ever imagined and you're not happy. You've got your dream partner, the woman of your dreams in Jada when that finally happened, and he wasn't happy,
Yeah.
right? That's that's a sobering thought because you and I can sit as non-famous people who work a 9 to 5 job and think, oh my gosh, if I had $10 million, I wouldn't feel stressed. I would feel, I would be doing this and that, and I'd be good. But and even this is something that is reflected often in the Dax Shepard podcast Armchair Expert, where he says, you know what, I thought if I was famous, I was rich, and I was rich, famous, and whatever the other thing was, then I would be perfectly happy. And he got all those things, and he was miserable. And it's just like it's not a magic bullet. Like if once you achieve that thing that you're like striving for, what's next, right? That's why
Hmm.
he always has to before he gets to that point with that thing, he's got to bail and he's got to jump onto that next thing. Whether it's a book, whether it's an album, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, he's got to be jumping to that next thing. It's crazy. I don't did you watch the 6 part YouTube series that he just put out right before the release of this book, The Best Shape of My Life?
I haven't. I just watched Welcome to Earth, the Nat
Welcome to
Geo
Earth.
thing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
that's pretty good too. I'm gonna have to check out Best Shape of My Life because I
Yeah.
found him
It
to be
was.
such an interesting, like, I don't always agree
Yeah.
with him, but he a person who's obsessed with entertaining people is very good at entertaining me.
Yeah.
I can say that up front.
Yeah.
He's very very entertaining and interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So
But
I'll
you
check
see,
that out.
the sadness behind that, right? When you put everything out there for every single person that you come in contact with, and this is something that I've read about Robin Williams with Jim Carrey, a lot of people who are Chris Farley, who are in that space of just a consummate entertainer, a constant entertainer, wanting to give that performance to everyone who walks up to them on the street. There's a real sadness behind that and a real depression. And a lot of times they turn to drugs. A lot of times they turn to, all these different kinds of vices because, you're putting on a mask and doing that for the entirety of your day when you're out in the public. And then when you come home, it's like I was just at a movie premiere where thousands of people were screaming my name and cheering for me, and then I go back to a hotel by myself and I sit in silence. And like the juxtaposition of that is just like startling, right?
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's I really like Will Smith. And even so, when I was watching this Best Shape of My Life series on YouTube, I felt bad for him. I felt like, oh, he's kind of got like a mean streak in him.
Hmm.
And he was deliberate about showing a side of him that he has been hiding.
Yeah.
And the pressure of hiding that from the public for so long has been eating away at him, and he just kind of like opened himself up to say, this is me, and I've got to be okay with people accepting that this is me. And like one of the stories, so if you don't know, Best Shape of My Life is a series about how he had vowed to lose, like he gained a whole bunch of weight to play Venus and Serena Williams' father in the movie King Richard. So he got out of shape and he was like, okay, well, I'm going to have a documentary crew film me as I work really hard to get back to my regular shape. And in his 50s and all of his, travel and everything like that, it's difficult and stuff like that. But what it became was like a fight against his public persona and his personal life, and that struggle like maintaining the two. And one of the things that it's really interesting, and it really gets deep, but he talks about this kind of turning point where those two came to a head, and he said, you know what, I need to protect my mental health. I need to know when to say when and set healthy boundaries. And as someone who, anyone wants a selfie, anyone wants an autograph or a video or anything like that, he would accommodate them. So he was promoting a movie. He was in another country, and he's like, man, I'm just feeling out of it. I don't feel good. I need to get away from this red carpet. I need to go work out. So he got access to like a private gym or something like that, and he's just working out. And then this guy comes up to him and says, "Yo, Will, my little brother, he's special needs. He just loves Will. He just loves
That's
you
in
and
the
everything."
book
He's like,
too.
yeah, it's in the book too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and um, oh, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it. I'm working out right now. He's like, yo, let's do a video together and send it to him. It will just make his day. And he goes, no, thanks, man. I'm good. And prior to, like he would never turn something like this down before, but he said, I'm going to set a boundary and I'm going to stick to it, and I have to for my own mental health. And then the guy was like, no, come on, Will. It'll just take a second. He goes, man, I don't want to do this. And the guy was like really flustered and he walked away. He finished his workout, and then Will went back to his hotel room and cried because
Right.
he had done that. It was like, on one hand, it's something he really, really needed to do for himself, but at the cost of everything he's built. This persona, this like, oh, you know, he's the Will Smith that you see on TV, and what you see is what you get, and it's, that was really hard for him. So it's a really interesting like deep dive into the real Will Smith, which I really appreciated seeing because, as I've said before, my first album was He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper, and
Right.
I became familiar with him, as the Fresh Prince. And then when the show came out, I was like, hey, that's that dude that I've been listening to for the past couple of years. Really liked that, and then, Men in Black and Independence Day and everything after that. It's just, I've been a real fan of. So it was really interesting to see him be that vulnerable, in a way that you don't see the biggest movie stars or the biggest celebrities. So I highly recommend checking that out. He brings his family in and he talks to them. It's really interesting because part of his book was like, I don't want anybody in my life to be surprised at what I'm writing in here. So I'm going to meet with each of them and read them the parts that are about them, so that it's all out there. And you want me to, give me notes, if there's something you're not comfortable with. But by and large, he put a lot of stuff in there that was like pretty startling, right? And he had his ex-wife in there, he had his kids in there, and he's reading parts about them to them, and it shows their faces and they're crying, they got tears and stuff. It was just a really deeply vulnerable series, and it was crazy to watch, just really interesting.
Let's grab a tie into the book because you touched on it there. Um, in the book, he talks about going through this, that he's buried the real Will under
Mm-hmm.
personas,
Yeah.
and he uh, has a what seems to be a great relationship with his therapist to work
Yeah.
through a lot of these things. And they name the personas, and the two main ones there that kind of protect or make decisions for Will, to let Will sit in a back chair in his head, are I think it's Uncle Fluffy
Mm-hmm.
is the persona that wants to please everyone, and it's what formed his entertainment career, and
Yeah.
it's born out of the the childhood trauma of his father abusing his mother, and his
Yeah.
response was, if I can please people, if I can entertain people, it's that wants to make everyone happy, and that persona, I would say, is the dominant like persona that comes to shape the public persona of who Will Smith is.
Right.
And then the other persona that kind of seems to be when Will needs to be protected or things just need to get done is the persona of the general.
The
And
general. Yeah.
so that part that's again influenced by his father, but more on like taking the endearing parts of his father. I think it was fueled also by the boxing trainer that he had during Ali,
Yeah.
that then became a part of his regular crew until
Yeah.
he decided to like just F off with the general
Yeah.
attitude when he was on the set with Jaden in was it Pursuit of Happiness, that like he's he chose his kids' happiness over the relentless pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, I
And
think it was After Earth, that second movie they
was
did
it
when he
After
was a little
Earth?
bit older.
Okay.
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, I think that like then like those things like to tie, my rough theme here was fluid versus rigid values. And I
Hmm.
don't mean that like values change necessarily over time, but not that you pick your values, but the value that he established was one where the focal point allowed many different vehicles and different iterations. He's fixated, like he is not an unfocused person,
Yeah.
but because he values making people happy, he values making sure people are entertained, and it's born out of that childhood trauma, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned Robin Williams, I think, was anchored by a similar thing. A lot of entertainers are anchored by that thing.
Yeah.
And when you value things like this, that the vehicle to get toward to achievement is it can be fluid. It creates a lot of mobility, and it creates a lot of like ability to pursue things in different ways, and you don't you have the ability to become different iterations of yourself and your craft. There's a lot of
Yeah.
room for growth, right? But with that also there's an inherent emptiness to it because it is perpetual. There
Yeah.
is no, you have to appreciate that it is a process that you enjoy. If you think that you're getting to a destination, you're going to turn into Will Smith at a certain point of his life where his box office numbers break records, and he's not satisfied with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I think
and
the story was the his producing partner Benny Medina called him, and this was what was the one where he was like the last man on earth or something like that. Um, I forget the name of it. But it's an apocalyptic movie, and it's like only Will Smith in it
is it
for
I Am
most
Legend?
of it. I Am Legend. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So he had this streak of movies that set box office records every single time, like, and every time he's breaking his own record. And then
Hmm.
I Am Legend comes out, and then Benny Medina calls him up and says, "Hey, Will, we did it. $80 million. Biggest opening weekend for a December movie ever." And Will said, "Yo, why do you think we didn't hit 90?" And
Right.
he hung up on him, right? And it's like he couldn't even enjoy that, right? He
Hmm.
had to like beat this artificial number that he came up with in his head because he was hitting the marks and it still wasn't providing that happiness. So it's like, well, maybe if it was this much more, I'd be happy, and
Right.
it's not happening. And finding that happiness has to come from within and not from the success of your project. Not for the one of the interesting things that he talked about was when he realized that he and Jada could not rely on each other for happiness. I'm pretending I'm Will Smith. Will's happiness can't be derived from another person. They can
Hmm.
make you happy, you can enjoy being with them and whatnot, but it still has to come from within. If you're not happy, it doesn't matter who you're with, you're not going to be happy. And that was kind of
Right.
like a big revelation, right?
That one's right on the nose too, because I mean his the the things with Jada um are directly related to his childhood trauma.
Yeah.
It's I mean that the Uncle Fluffy wanting to entertain everybody thing um drove everything else, right? But with
Yeah.
his relationship with Jada, what he had to confront is that this this persona that he had built to protect himself um in his early days, and make, like, he came up with the delusion that he could make his dad happy, that he could make his mom happy, that
Yeah.
he could make people around him, he could fix things.
No, well, not only make them happy, but protect them
Yes.
because, and and he talks about he watched his dad hit his mom so hard that she passed out, and he thought in that moment, when I'm keeping Daddy-O laughing, he's not hitting, he's not
Right.
hurting, and stuff like that. So he felt a failure to protect his mom in that moment and decided that for the rest of his life, he is going to protect all of the women in his life, whether they need it or not, whether they want it or not, whether it's warranted or not. But he was going to do that. And entertainment meant protection. If you, and then he even translated that to being an African American man in, being the only African American in a setting where it's, he's in a school full of, that's predominantly Caucasian and stuff like that. If he's making them laugh, he's not being targeted, like racially
Yeah.
motivated and stuff like that. So like that carried through, which is a really, really interesting thread that kind of weaves throughout his life, his career. It's really, I don't know. I felt moved by that, and I felt that.
Me too. It was
You know,
important for me to hear.
yeah,
Like I feel like I'm on a rather front end part of like like untangling some similar things.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it was helpful for me not to hear that, not as an awakening, because it wasn't just an awakening, it was a
yeah,
resonance of, oh yeah, when if I'm uh I with my relationships, the way that I've sunk my failed relationships is trying to be all about that person,
yeah,
and that person's happiness and safety is my responsibility.
yeah,
And I get to inferring what nonverbals mean, uh, and like I feel like I need to spend every moment with that person. Like that person needs to be fulfilled by me.
yeah,
And I have found through just I've found a lot of the same things that Will has, that's a
yeah,
drain on both people, and
yeah,
that people aren't unions. People are individuals, and when you lose your identity, you lose everything. And you can't be happy if you're not if you're not sitting with yourself, right? If you're
right,
constantly out there being about everyone else, and no one's it's like capture the flag, right? If no one's guarding the flag,
right,
it's gone. So yeah, it was important for me to
absolutely.
hear that.
Absolutely, and almost like a not like you said, not a revelation, but maybe a template, and holding up a mirror to saying like, yeah, I do that, or I've done that, and had similar feelings and reactions and stuff. So that's I want to transition real quick to abuse.
Yeah.
Um, the awkward transition. So
Yeah.
that's what that's for. But I think it's really poignant, and I think this was one of the tent poles that you were talking about in the beginning. And I'm going to try to do my best to encapsulate it. But he talks about his dad's abuse of his mother, abuse of the children, physical abuse, emotional abuse. Yet he loves him. Yet I think he said something like, "My father has been both my greatest source of pain and also love. And it is very easy to say he's a piece of shit and he is an abuser and everything like that, but talking about the depth of people and talking about how you can love a deeply flawed person. A deeply flawed person can also have a positive impact on your life. And that's something that that's really difficult to grasp, right? Because in order to protect ourselves, we say, I'm not, that person is dead to me. I'm not going to engage with that person anymore. I'm only speaking with, from my own personal experience and saying, like, I don't want to engage with that anymore, right? And he, for the first time as I'm hearing this, he made it not weird to me that he still had a relationship with his father. And I think it was kind of difficult to grasp until he talked about it and talked about his death. And, like, I think he said after his death, it freed him to talk about the things that he had been hiding for, forever, right? But man, that was really powerful to me. For him to say he was the greatest source of love in my life and also the greatest source of pain, which
Yeah.
that's a statement, man. That is, I've never heard that before.
What's your experience with abuse? Do you have?
It's not, I haven't, I have to be honest, I haven't experienced that personally, but I was kind of parlaying that thought into not wanting to be around toxic people and not wanting to,
Mm-hmm.
if someone is a racist person, I don't want anything to do with them. If someone is if their values don't align to mine, screw them. I'm not gonna to bend over backwards to keep them in my life. And so that I think I've maybe been in the past quick to do that, and then thinking, well, Will went through this very traumatic experience with his upbringing and stuff like that, but he was still able to honor him
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate him despite of that, right? So it's not a one-to-one apples to apples kind of thing, but it was impactful to me in that I could recognize that and maybe apply it to my life. So that's
Yeah,
that's it.
I do think there's a tie-in with like his the wanting to please people and then how that formed his values of like always having the next thing and just like the general fluidity that I kind of talk about. I think that
Yeah.
Will Smith is a person that um, morphs and evolves, and what
Yeah.
how he talks about his father now, if you could have heard him talk about his father in an earlier part of his life, might be very different. I mean, he
Yeah.
he talks about relationships different. And I think that's a major thing that I appreciate about the book is that he doesn't try to editorialize like from his vantage point of life now, looking back on past events as if he's not the character there. He really tries to embody and represent to the best of his ability, looking backwards,
Yeah.
how he felt at the time. And I think that that's an impactful part of this. Um, just to touch on it, um, I I had abuse in my home growing up that I wasn't as aware of.
Yeah.
I wasn't. It didn't happen in front of me, at least not during an age where I could recall it.
Yeah.
But I found out in adulthood a lot more of what had happened. Um, and this is a reason why I think I'm not good at picking up on nonverbal cues. Like
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm a linguistic person. I'm not a very good non-linguistic person,
Yeah.
and that's why like making people happy was such a stupid thing for me to try to do, because like if I can't tell you what a face means. If you make a face at me, like, and then I've realized that I about that about myself, like people infer stuff about me based upon my nonverbals that are way
Mm.
off, because
Yeah.
my nonverbal game is awful. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. You have
that's a
resting
tangent.
Jeff face.
I do. People infer things about what I'm thinking that I'm not, because my face does not res- I can only I can only infer. Here I go again, inferring about, I don't know what's going on. All I
Yeah.
know is that people regularly think I'm upset when I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
People regularly like think I'm just not happy about stuff, because if I show up not talking, because on a regular basis I'm a talkative person, right? But I'm
Yeah.
also a listener, and when I can turn that on, I tend to be extreme in the ways that I show up in places.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I anyway I appreciate his story and his um the way that he laid out his father as his greatest source of love and pain.
Yeah.
um so much I believe so much of who I am, good and bad, are characteristics that my father influenced. My father was a huge influence on my life,
Yeah.
and both in ways that, like, and I think it's true with Will. Like, there's stuff about his father, like the brick by brick kind of stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
he picked out the positive and wanted to do that, and then
Yeah.
the stuff that he thought was flaws of his dad, he went the absolute opposite direction. And that is very much in line about how I've built myself as a person.
Yeah.
Not always intentionally. It's just that's how that's how I am. Now
Yeah.
his ability, and like you said, everyone's situation is different. His ability to keep his father in his life is baffling to me.
Yeah.
Because in my, and maybe it's because of when he was forced to make that choice. He was forced to make that choice when he was quite young. He witnessed his mother getting knocked out by his
Yeah.
father, and he did not have the choice to leave the home. And so I think that kind of codifies in you a little bit of
Right.
like you live with that. The traumas, I was, my mother took, and she told me this, that she took steps to frame my dad in a light that she thought was an appropriate father figure.
Yeah.
um
For
and
you.
for me,
Yeah.
and even though she knew that her marriage was over when I was 5 years old,
Yeah.
and I was 20 years old before she left him.
Yeah.
um and so I think that there's different situations there. By and I'm thinking about this now, by deferring my awareness until I was 20, um I was able to first off take my time. It wasn't overnight that I made a decision on how my relationship with my father would be going forward. um, but it also allowed me to have the ability to make that choice as an adult, and without the baggage of like knowing and having to like just integrate it into my childhood. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't always, it was a new thing. And I think also the distance from it made it so that I can make the choice more rationally, right? Like if you're an investigator picking up a cold case,
Yeah.
you probably don't have the baggage of like if the original investigator that was there and experienced all the media coverage and the urgency when a person was found dead.
Right.
So I'll just say, like, I've been estranged from my father for um, getting close to a decade now,
Yeah.
and it's been a really healthy life choice for me,
For sure.
because he's a sociopath, because he doesn't care about anyone else, and just go in that direction.
Yeah.
As I sit right now, I have no intent to have a future relationship, but I still look back on, like, going to Red Wing games with him as a kid
Hmm.
and thinking very fondly of it, and telling my kids about, when I was a kid, my dad would take me here and we would do this. And I still do things like my eating choices, right? Like the things that I value, the way that I approach conversation. My
Yeah.
my my dad was a very, I mean, he's still alive, but like my dad is very, my dad is very loud. My dad is very talkative. He loves holding court and
Yeah. Yeah.
having that, and I think that these are all good things. And so in a way, I'm similar in where I I can extract what I like now. Like, I don't demonize in holistically. I'm not regretful that that's my past. I've come to peace with and part of it is my mom has given me permission to, like it's okay. Like
Yeah.
that's my past, and I made those choices, and it wasn't your choice to make, and I'm okay now. Like, you can feel how you want to feel. Just make sure that you're making healthy choices for yourself. Um, so I can empathize with that, but my decision, I got to tell you, when he was talking about his dad, like in the final days, and forgiving him, it did
Mm.
make me think a little bit about like forgiveness. For death is permanent,
Yep.
and and forgiveness is cathartic. And it got me to thinking about, is it I've have I forgiven? And
Mm.
even if I don't do it, even if I don't let him know that I've forgiven him, how important it is for me to be at peace with 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 myself, that
Yeah.
I hold that in my heart,
Yeah.
because bitterness, regardless of right or wrong, and justifiable bitterness,
Yeah.
um, is not something to hold.
Right. Well,
And
it
there's
hurts
definitely
you. It
some of
doesn't
that.
hurt. It doesn't hurt the perpetrator of that against you, right? It hurts
Hmm.
you, right? You're the one that it's causing anxiety. You're the one who, is disadvantaged by holding on to that. So, and I don't even know that Will truly forgave his dad. I think he was able to recognize in him some humanity, and he chose to have a relationship with him for his own reasons, and that's what worked for him. I don't think that there's any sense, and maybe I was giving off this vibe when I said that earlier, but I want to be clear that I wasn't saying like he is a good person because he forgave. I think for
No.
him, it was what he was comfortable with and what he wanted. For you, for anyone else in the world, um, what you do to preserve your mental state is appropriate and good. So just to be clear on that. But what I do want to say, and thank you for sharing that. Um, I want to say, like, man, what a beautiful, messy existence we all have, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have those things. You can experience that, whether it's you, whether it's Will, whether it's me and things that I've experienced that don't, compare, but we can have those experiences and honor the good in them and recognize what it was that meant something to us and also recognize the other stuff. And that's life. It's messy, but it's sort of like a beautiful chaos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, sounds like you got a visitor there. Do you want to wrap this up? Do you want to come to the conclusion here?
Yeah.
All right. So let let me just cue this little guy up here and say, it just cracks me up. It's like we're on
Hmm.
TV or something.
Yeah.
It's like HTV, HGTV. So I really liked this book as someone who has followed Will Smith for his entire career, from 17-year-old rapper to 52-year-old YouTuber. And I started out the book enjoying the that's okay, enjoying the behind the scenes details of all of these events that I'm familiar with as someone who's followed him. But as the book turned toward the inter portions of him and his life, and the reflection that he had, and the ways in which he realized, the things that were harming him and things that he had to do to protect himself and his mental health. I got something out of that too. So it started off as being a fanboy, and then at the end, it was kind of like a self help book, and an introspection kind of,
Hmm.
like, hey, what, and relating it to my life, and stuff. So I really liked it. I liked the audiobook especially, and especially hearing him swear, because you don't hear him swear too much, right?
It seems like
That's cool.
that was, I don't think that that was forced either. Like I don't think he went that direction to just be completely opposite.
Yeah.
Like his grandmother Gigi really struck a chord with him in like projecting his public persona
Yeah.
as it ended up being. And that's an interesting wrinkle too. Like the amount of swearing that was in there. Um like I think the points one of the points that kind of took me out of flow of listening to him sometimes was uh, both that it sounded like he was reading, like he doesn't have a good fluid speaking voice, and when I say
Mm.
speaking, I mean like scripted
Yeah.
speaking voice, which as an actor, like I would think like his ability to like use tone and inflection, I thought it was lacking.
Yeah.
I also um I don't know this is necessarily negative, but something I noticed is that he he uses a lot of unnecessary vocabulary to describe in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
I feel like he churched the vocabulary up a lot, and maybe that's
Yeah.
just the way that he writes and the way that he thinks, and there's not a much edit there. But some of the phrasing just kind of took me out of it, like what's going on. And so I don't want to infer that he's trying to sound smart, or
Yeah.
that maybe that's just how it is, but it's not the way I'm used to hearing him talk.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the authentically him part. So that's more of an
Yeah.
interesting part. The reading thing, I think, like the flow could have improved.
Sure.
The I think something that definitely is a plus for the audiobook is you get a little bit of music, like spliced in there,
Yeah.
and I mean, it fits really well.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So for me, all the points that you talked about, I think I was probably like the most vivid like parts of my brain in following the story were the early stories, probably up in through like the Quincy Jones stuff.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
because there's such fantastic stories.
Yeah.
And but and then I think he continues it as he's starting to talk about like his self reflect, like looking, because he got more famous after Fresh Prince, and he got
Yeah.
more of a jerk and less and more out of touch with what he was. He stopped having much fun,
Yeah.
and became like this pursuit of excellence person as the movie star. He didn't he So he started like critiquing himself as he was continuing to tell the same level of interesting stories. Like I found the detail of the Quincy Jones story to be amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, because it's famous people and just this bizarre behavior of it.
Yeah.
The Nelson Mandela story has all those same ingredients, but it was like his self critique, and I feel like it minimized like you could have let that breathe with the detail a little bit
Yeah.
more. I don't know if there's not as much detail there, as the Quincy Jones story, but like
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, this dude's talking about meeting Nelson Mandela and like having a personal relationship with him, and Nelson Mandela telling him like he wants to spend more time with him and saying that he's an
Yeah.
important person, and then the story's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, tell a whole book about Mandela.
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
that, like, wait a minute, like it became like just a passing. Yeah, I met Mandela.
Mm-hmm.
I had this conversation with Ali, and he did Ali things, and
Yeah.
and maybe and so but how I take it, Brandon, like in the whole of everything, is he was painting the picture of his life speeding up. It's like
Yeah.
he let it breathe at the start because it was all happening organically and things were new and they were exciting, and then it hit this point where it was boom boom boom, like his epic run became
Yeah.
hard for me to follow, and
Yeah.
it became disjointed, and then all of a sudden it's like he hits a wall, and then it's turning in like the therapy and the introspection and
Yeah.
saying goodbye to his father, and
Yeah.
it got
Over
slow
FaceTime.
again
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and but all the work he put in before that to where FaceTime didn't feel weird. The level of detail that he tells the story
Yeah.
about his father leaving is the same level of detail he's told the story about being in Quincy Jones' office, or when he did his own ad libs, when he did his own rewrites, and he had to go to the exec's office, and he almost ended
Yeah.
up like murking this 50-60 year old white exec, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um um I I like this book because of like that implicit speeding up, like slow speeding up, slowing down, and
Yeah.
how it mirrors kind of the chaos and the calm of the different phases of his life. So I definitely I recommend this book. Like if you appreciate like literary structure, like I think it's a well told story,
Yeah.
and it creates feelings in you that help you to empathize with where he's at. And it's one of the rare books that like tells it, and especially a memoir, because I really dig memoirs in general.
Yeah. Me too.
But the risk that you run, when you're reading a book by a person that usually you already have a pre-existing interest in liking, is that you end up drinking Kool-Aid like heavily. And I
Yeah.
think he
Yeah.
did a good job of like the way that he framed his life. There was stuff I disagreed with. Like I just told, like I would not get. I would his dad like punching his mom. I would have taken his brother's approach. Like he
Yeah.
was wrong.
Yep.
Um, and I like that he invites the way that he framed it. He invites you to disagree with him. But he also invites you to listen to it anyway,
Yeah,
which is really powerful. So yeah, I like
absolutely.
it, man.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that you called attention to that because I didn't really recognize it at the time. I knew something was going on, but the way that you talked about it, where it's like the phases of his life, it's like his early and the struggle and all of that was like kind of methodical and slow and stuff like that. And then it hits a point like in the early 2000s where he's the Will Smith, and it's like boom, 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 movie, and then all of a sudden we're like, taking peyote in a national park or something. I was like, what's happening? How did we get here? Right?
That was really detailed again, right? Like like
Yeah,
he's talking about what he's laying the setting and everything like that. But that middle section is chaos.
it's
Like
crazy.
it's so hard to, especially when you're not reading the text and you can't control your own pacing and you're going with
Yeah,
him. Like that, but that's part of the experience, right? Like that's how he
absolutely.
felt.
Yeah. Well, and I felt it along with him because he is a master storyteller, and we got to experience it in that way by listening to it. So yeah, loved it, loved it. Thumbs up. Check it out. So thank you for listening to us
It's like the
talk
logo.
about. Hey, here we go. Here we go.
You have less hair on your arms. It looks more like it.
Yep. I'm a swimmer. I shave him. No, I don't. Um, anyway, thank you for joining us on this journey. Please check out the book. We both highly recommend it. So, any last words, Jeff?
Nope.
Nope. All right. I wish we could do a thing where we both get thrown out of the call like Jazz thrown by Uncle Phil. So again, thank you for watching. I'm Brandon. That's Jeff. We'll talk to you next time. Take it easy.